Welcome to Book Banter with me, your host, Diane Burkhart. I hope you will join me every Wednesday as we explore all things to do with, well, books. Let's get on with our show today. Hello, my happy people. Today is October 16th, 2024, and I am so frazzled right now. There is so much going on over here behind the scenes. We've got print versions of Book Banter magazine being put together. We do have the first issue already available on Amazon if you want to go check that out. We have a contest going on to win a year's subscription to our digital format of Book Banter magazine. We've got guest applications for Book Banter with Diane Burkhart podcast getting ready to open up for our fourth season that begins February 2025. And I'm getting ready to go to the Frankfurt Buchmesse, the largest publishing convention in the world with people from all around the globe. It's going to be amazing. And boy, I'm just tired thinking about everything that I need to get done. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get right to today's interview. But don't forget to hang around to the very end because I'm going to give you details about all the things that I just mentioned at the end of today's interview. So let's get to it. Please welcome to Book Banter with Diane Burkhart, author D.G. McCool Jr. Please introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do.
Okay. My name is Del McCool. As a pen name, I use D.G. McCool Jr. on fiction books, and I use the name Del McCool on nonfiction books. So you may see both names out there. What I do is I'm an independent author, and I started writing back years ago when I was younger in school, and developed to the point where I wrote a first real manuscript in 2010. Got it published in 2022, but I released one book in 2021 prior to that. So since 2021, I've been writing, and now I retired this year, so I'm full-time writing.
Well, I have to say, I think that you won the lottery on getting a good last name to be an author.
Right.
Because it is so easy to remember.
Right. I've actually had a few people email me and say, that's not a good pen name. You should pick a different name. That doesn't sound real. And then I tell them, well, actually, that is my name.
Well, and plus, I think it's fantastic. It sounds unique, and it's something that you could really remember.
Sure.
And plus, I think it's fantastic for doing sci-fi.
Absolutely, absolutely. And primarily, I do sci-fi, and I've done a few of the books, which is in my collection, yes.
I know you said that you had just recently retired. What were you doing as your day job?
I was raised in Kansas City, Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
After school, I went into military Army for 10 years and then went into law enforcement for 14 as a peace officer, 8 years in Texas and 6 years in Kansas. Then I went into the corporate world, and for 24 years, I was a senior director in a company that made tablet computers, and so I managed a lot of people and worked in the business world. I started writing, like I said, well, the book that got published first was in 2021, and I retired January 2024. So my first 4 books were written part-time, and since January of this year, now I think we've released about 6 books because I'm doing it 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, pretty much.
Well, I know, and a lot of your sci-fi books have sort of a military theme to them. Are you going back to your previous work history to pull some of that information?
Right. And a couple of the books, the Dark World series, which is currently 3 books out and the 4th book coming out later this year, it involves the main character who was military and law enforcement, which is my background. And so that is a bit of a theme that I do put in. And another whole series is coming out next year. It's strictly a former military person who's becomes a private eye for the occult cases.
That sounds really interesting. I love that kind of stuff. Now, the title of this just really got to me, and I know this is one of your novellas. It's not one of the bigger books, but book number 1, The War of the Bees, Bees of Deception.
Yes. Yes. Okay. That book there, a friend of mine, last name McCool, no kin, lives in South Carolina. And he goes by the name of Critter McCool because for 40 years he is a person that collects bees and wasps off of people's property.
Oh, wow.
And he had been reading some of my sci-fi, and he said, could I write a story about a beekeeper who becomes a superhero, basically, kind of like a Blue Beetle type of a
Hmm.
scenario. And so I put the book together for him in a very short time and sent it to him, just thinking, here's your book. And he goes, no, I want you to publish it under your name. Just give me an honorable mention. And so I went back and cleaned it up a little bit and did a little more work on it, went ahead and released it. And it's basically a person who's working in a high top secret lab with experimental serums, gets purposely injected by the doctor, and it gives him the powers of a bee. And then the whole story goes from there. He goes rogue, and then there's other characters and presidential assassinations. And this was written before anything that happened in the recent news. And
Hmm.
so there's all these things are in that particular novella.
I don't know why, but it's just something about that short story just really kind of like hit me. I thought this sounds
Yeah,
so fun.
it actually really was. I really, because I think my other stories like The Dark World, this is really intense and it's got so many layers, and it
Hmm.
takes a lot of concentration and over 3 books to make sure I'm consistent. And this thing was a lighthearted 1 week write, just kind of taking his idea and putting it into something I felt would be kind of a light story, but yet kind of adventurous and exciting.
Now, your most recent book, is that the book one in was it Leandros Chronicles?
Yes, that's
Beneath
the
the
newest.
Pillars of Hercules.
Yes, that actually came out a week ago, so it's real recent. And that one is also a novella, even though it doesn't say on the cover, it does inside the book. It's 150 pages or something, uh, but it's about 20,000 words, I think. But its main theme is that back in 500 BC or BCE, depending on what you use for the terminology,
Hmm.
there's a Greek soldier on a ship that it collides with a UFO that crashes into the Mediterranean, and he ends up surviving and basically meets one of the aliens who happens to turn out to look like a mermaid. And then through the event, they get rescued, and she takes him back to Atlantis, and it's a real place outside the Pillars of Hercules on the bottom of the ocean. And then it goes to a whole set of adventures where they're actually fighting the notorious draconian reptilian race that has landed in Central America and has taken over the Mayans and the Olmec and looking to conquer the world. So then the whole storyline, he's kind of the Odysseus because he is from Ithaca, which Odysseus was, and the Greek mythology. And so this character working with the Atlanteans, who are high tech, more modern, they're out to do some things that are happening in Central America.
The one thing that I just absolutely love about your stuff is you have so many elements that you blend into them. I mean, you
Right.
take from so many different things and pull it together into one story. I love that you have like military and spaceships and mermaids. I mean,
Right.
it's fantastic.
Well, going back to the Dark World for a minute, it's kind of my premier book series with book 4 coming out, but it involves so many things that it kind of starts off at the very beginning, and they're talking like at an alien con about, are aliens real? And then the storyline goes into a government whistleblower who releases secret blue book and some project stuff saying that they are real and they're in our government and they can uh, disguise themselves in human form, and that's how that book starts. And then you meet the character who was the military guy who became enchanted while he was in Iraq. He got shot down, captured, and was in a place where stolen and things from the Baghdad Museum were stored. He touched an artifact and became enchanted and didn't know it. And came back to America and became a cop. And then some events took place, and suddenly he's got these abilities where he can he can do astral projections, he can read people's aura, he can talk to the dead, and he's got all these abilities that slowly develop in the story. And then he stumbles upon a whole group that already has these abilities that are linked back to ancient Sumer and the old ancient clay tablets. And then you've got an archaeologist who deciphers some of the tablets, and he finds out a whole new set of things that were held back from the general public. And so he kind of starts releasing this information, and that it goes against the governments and world religions. So they're not happy with this character. And then there's another character that comes in that has the ability of an ancient stone that he can remove your soul. He's a soul snatcher, and so he becomes immortal. And you've got all 4 of these characters competing in book 1, and then it lays the outline for the next 3 books.
Does the Gardener of the Soul series come after that?
Well, Garden of Souls is originally it was the first name of the series. When I first launched it in 2021, the first book was called Truth Dreamers, and the second book was Ancient Ones Revealed under the Garden of Souls banner. Then when I wrote book three, I realized there's so much backstory I needed, so I went back and redid book one and two and changed the series name to the Dark World, changed Truth Dreamers into Messenger Dreams, added about 20,000 words to it, and of course, new ISBN. And then book two of the Ancient Ones Revealed then fell into the Dark World, and it had some enhancements. And then book three came out, which is the one of Warriors of the Heavens and Earth. And so as those three build, you start off with all these characters that were originally in the Truth Dreamers book, now in the Messenger Dreams. By book two, they're actually seeking out these different alien groups that are hiding in plain sight. And then by book three, all heck breaks loose where the aliens come out from behind the veil and they're pushing for a new world order and they start taking over under the guise of looking like other people. They start a launch, just so hypothetical. They actually take over the Russians and the Chinese first, and the Russians start attacking their neighbors. The Chinese start attacking their neighbors, and people think it's just humans doing it. They don't realize there's aliens behind it, and then it progresses. The Anunnaki, which I don't know if you're familiar with the term,
Mm-hmm.
but okay, the Anunnaki returned to Earth because in part of the book one, they talk about how they came and seeded the Earth and created the Homo sapien from Neanderthal with the DNA. A lot of this is in other lore if you go back and read other
Mm-hmm.
books that say this. And so they return to the Earth and they get in the middle of the fray, and you've got reptilians and Greys and Anunnaki and all these people jockeying for position by book three. And it ends up a small group of humans are able to be isolated from the main battle, and that's where book three ends, and then book four takes you into their adventures.
So now, how did you go from being career military and police to writing such fantastical sci-fi books?
Well, because I am one of these plus 65 age people, and so what I do is I start out with things like R's for Rocket and the Foundation, trilogy, and the following
Mm-hmm.
books from Isaac Asimov, and I was deep in H.G. Wells, Jules Verne.
Mm-hmm.
As a young man, these were the books I just loved, and so I really absorbed that. And in my early writings in high school, I wrote several short stories that were sci-fi, and then in the military, I wrote a few. And then by 2010, I sat down with a friend of mine, and he background's ex-military, ex-cop, and we wrote the one that's called Future Conquest, which is out there also, and it's a pure space opera, shoot 'em up. It's kind of like two guys are in this space navy, and they go out and across the galaxies and get in all kinds of trouble. And so there was kind of me and Steven were the two characters, but we're in the story, right? So we wrote that in 2010, but I had no idea to ever publish it. And it basically set, people in our groups read it and said, wow, this is good. And then when I actually published True Dreamers in 2021, that became Messenger Dreams, then I went back and took that manuscript and got it published as Future Conquests. And it's a standalone. It's supposed to be a book one of two, but Steven was supposed to do book two, and I've done about 8 books, and he's still working on book two. So
So now, what was the first book that you published?
technically, first actual published book was True Dreamers, the Guardian of Souls series, which became Messenger Dreams.
How long did that take you from concept of that book to actually publishing?
Yeah, since it was my first book, I did what a lot of young authors do, and I went to the internet to find out how can I get this thing published. I had a draft manuscript I had written starting in 2020, and so I really started writing it heavy in 2020. By early 2021, I got on the web, found a company that said, "Hey, send us your manuscript, and for X dollars, we'll get it published for you." Kind of a
Mm,
Vandy Press thing, right? And
yeah.
so I didn't know. So I jumped right on that wagon, and they did a not as good a job as anybody would like with the editing. They chopped the story up so much that people who'd read it before couldn't even understand it. And
Oh,
I
wow.
reread it, but I made the mistake as a young author. I was so excited just getting my book published that I went
Hmm.
ahead and signed off on it, right? And I didn't even read it word for word. And
Yeah.
they picked me a cover. Now the story, I stated earlier, a lot of this happened in Sumer, so I had told them I'd like a cover with a Sumerian theme. They put a pyramid with an Egyptian on the front, and I said, I said, that's not Sumerian. And their reply was, people won't know. I'm like, okay, the people reading this book will know.
Hmm.
So I went out and selected a random cover as a sample and sent it to them. Said, I meant like this. So they used it. And I didn't have the rights to that cover. So at that point, I'd always spent close to $3,000 with them and I
Oh,
stopped.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so I stopped. And then I went out and got a different editor who working with me. We put the second version of True Dreamers back together and put a lot of things that got taken out and cleaned it up well. I selected a new cover, which was, if you might see it on the web, it's got like a big glowing eyeball with flames coming out or something crazy. And I used that for a very short period, but I got pushed back. So I went to a more sedated cover. It was a green cover. But anyway, so that's kind of the learning from that. So when we did Future Conquests, I strived out and let Stephen take care of the editing. I went through and just mimicked what I paid these people money to do, and got it on Amazon, Drafted Digital, Ingram Spark. I did an audiobook of the original True Dreamers. It's still out there, and pretty much its second version, the revised version. And from that point on, I do use places like Reedsy for editing, and I
Mhm.
use Fiverr to help me with. I pay for most of the book covers. I pay for from a company that produces the cover. Then I have Fiverr make the spine and the back for me because the cost is less. And I
Mhm.
have a girl who's been working with me for 4 years. Just does a really great job.
At what point did you decide to start your own publishing imprint?
Well, that was when I had to redo True Dreamers at that point. Because I saw what was going on, and I started really getting into a lot of the author sites or indie author sites. Early on, I tried to communicate a lot with standard, what you call standard authors, and I felt like they kind of pushed me back, so to speak. And so I went back and started focusing on doing the thing myself and going down that route.
I love the fact that you're actually helping other authors that you know too.
Oh yes, I do that quite a bit now. I'll reach out to because I'm on several. I have my own website, the DG McCool website, and then of course, or the I have a stand-up website, DG McCool Facebook, and of course I have the other social media. But yeah, there's often points I will, and a lot of interviews I do. One of the last things I tell people are, don't get pulled into something that's taking a lot of your money that you don't get a product. Use the other resources available to get yourself to that point where you can get it published. And if you are lucky enough, or however you want to view it, to get a agent and go the standard route, great. I now know a lot of authors. I didn't early on,
Mhm.
and I go to these conventions and I talk to a lot of traditional authors and a lot of indie authors, and they've all been very gracious and yeah, I really enjoy that. And you can always learn something. And because I look at a lot of these sites, I'll pick up a thing here and there that I didn't know or wasn't clear on.
So now, how did you get hooked up with Stephen Meeks? Mhm.
Stephen is the person I was referring to earlier that was also ex-military, ex-law enforcement, and we became friends because we rode motorcycles together and karaoke together. And so basically, I had told him about this idea for future conquests, and back in 2010. And I based some of this on, I used to play role play games. There's one called Traveler, which is kind of like a Dungeon and Dragons in space. And I had crafted up some background material for that game, and I used it as the blueprint to start the story of Future Conquest. And then Stephen and I would write a while, and then he would read what I wrote, and then he would write a while, and it wasn't like set time. It's not like we wrote each a chapter or something. Then I would get it back, read what he wrote, and I would write. We did this, leapfrogged each other for about a year, and then finally we stopped. Got to an ending, said, "Okay, there's our little thing," and that's pretty much what happened there.
See, but how did it actually come up that you were both like writers and it's like, okay, let's write something together? How did that conversation come about?
Sure, sure. Yeah, basically because we actually met riding motorcycles, and we, online, it's a motorcycle event there in Austin, Texas area, and so we met, and we got to talking. We had a lot of things in common. our wives both happened to be Mexican American, and so our wives had a lot in common. And while we got to talking, then we started talking about, what are our hobbies? And I said, well, I write on the side. And then he goes, oh, really? What do you write? And sci-fi? Well, I like sci-fi. I write sci-fi. And then we ride motorcycle, sci-fi, karaoke. Like I said, we both love doing karaoke. And so it was just so many things. The synergy was there. And so I sat down and just wrote like basically kind of like an epilogue and most of chapter one of the draft. He read what I wrote. And he said, "You mind if I jump in?" I went, "No, go for it." And then sometimes it's kind of like a zigzag road because at that point we were definitely pantsing it. There was no structure at all,
Mhm.
and so I really kind of thought, well, the story's going this direction. Stephen would read it and he would whip it to the right on me, and then I would read what he wrote. Thought, well, how can I get back more center? And I'd lip it back to the left, and we kind of zigzag through it, but it actually worked out very well. And it was actually a lot of fun to write because there was no pressure. I never expected to get it published or anything. And by the end of it, then we had what we have now, which is the Future Conquest book. And I actually started writing a second book, and then I stopped because I was at the same time I was also doing my what was the Gardener of Souls that had now became the Dark World, and so I was doing that series, and I thought I can't really donate my time to both because I've gotten to the point now where I can decently write a book in 3 months. I mean, I can put together a 1 week story like the Bees of Deception, but most of my books take about 90 days from idea to finish. And then my way of writing is I usually write kind of what you could call an epilogue and a prologue and an epilogue
Mhm.
is what I kind of do. I figure how I want the story to start and how I want this particular book to end. And then I pantser between. I'll take off from what I said the story should start as and guide it to where I think the story should end. Sometimes I have to go back and modify either end of it to make it fit. And then I'm already writing the prologue and epilogue for the next book in the series. And sometimes I'll have the draft like that written for like 3 books ahead, just so that I know where I'm taking the story. And because I didn't do that originally, I wrote book one as just kind of a standalone of the Dark World, and book two, and then I had to go back and tweak things to fit book one. And then for the first couple of books, I did that until I figured out how to do this better.
I think if you like take all the days that I actually write and put them together, that's probably about how long it takes me to write a book. But
Right,
those
right.
writing days are so far spread out between doing podcast interviews and podcast business and magazine stuff. And
Oh yeah, yeah. No,
I never seem to be consistent on writing every day.
I I get the most opportunity to write since I retired because my wife we have children and grandchildren in Austin, and we live just north of Houston now, about a 3.5 hour drive from each other. So she'll go over there for a few weeks and visit with the kids and the grandkids, and I focus 12 hours a day on writing.
Hmm.
And then when she's back, I write in the evenings and weekends in between, whatever we have going on as a couple.
I hate to admit this, but whenever my husband goes out of town on business, usually the first 3 hours of my alone time is spent playing Fortnite. And then I start writing.
Well, what I unfortunately will do is if I don't really have a problem. Well, the way I write, I literally in many cases see the story as a movie in my head, and
Hmm.
I put on the headset, I open up a blank piece of paper, and turn on the voice to text, and I just start talking. And you can probably tell I don't have a problem in talking, so I will sit there and just tell the story like I'm describing a TV show I'm watching, and to a point where I stop. Then I'll go back and run it through the pipe and clean it up, and then start editing it and grammarly it and do all those basic things. And then I'll play it back to myself to make sure I use the correct words that I
Hmm.
meant, and fix it so that it sounds right, it reads right, and things like that. So that's kind of how I get it. But if I run it, I rarely have what you could call a writer's block. But on a few days, I will then get on Facebook and watch reels mindlessly for 4 hours, and
Yeah.
just kind of decompress. And then I'll stop myself and go back and pull up the story and start reading where I was at and where I'm going, and start writing again.
I love it. That's one of the ways that I always describe how I write to people is that there's just a movie going in my head and I'm just writing down what's happening in the movie.
Yeah, it really. And sometimes the movie's not really going where you wanted it to go, but it works out usually.
Hmm. Yeah. Now, who are your YA authors?
Yeah, Brandy and Cassandra. Yeah, we've only got the one book, The Ghost of Hollow Ridge. And so what's cool about that is they're actually two of my daughters. But but one of them is 46 and one's 24. And so there's quite a bit of age between them. My oldest child and my youngest child, right, out of seven.
Hmm.
And so what happened
Wait a
is
minute, did you just say
uh,
out of seven?
yeah, out of seven. And we have 14 grandchildren and one great grandchild. So
Wow,
but
Christmas must be crazy at your house.
well, that's why we moved 3.5 hours away from everyone. They have to find us. But with this particular story, we actually lived in a home in the Austin area that was on a street called Hollow Ridge, and so what happened was, I'm not going to say it was haunted, but
Hmm.
it appeared that there was a spirit in that home, and we started having a lot of you could call ghostly encounters, multiple people, visitors to our home.
Hmm.
And so we sat down and kind of drafted it. And then some of the events that took place is actually in that book. My daughter Brandy brought in a Wiccan who did a reading and gave us the name of a ghost and this whole backstory. And my mother came to visit and she encountered this cold, chilly, dark shadow in the hallway and didn't tell anybody. Nobody was telling each other what happened until it kind of broke and we all start saying, well, I saw this, well, I saw that. Everyone thought they were, dreaming or imagining. So we took that detail, Brandy and Cassandra and I sat down and we drafted the outline for the book. And then basically once we all three agreed on the storyline, then they handed it off to me. So I'm the ghostwriter of it. So I get like an honorable mention in the front title, but not on the cover, right? It just says, I think, story creation by me. But anyway, I went ahead and I took it from a suburb in Austin and put it in the 1800s in Delaware in an old mansion that happened to be above a cave system. And then I took the story a whole route of the real ghost stuff that it encounters into the storyline, but I also added in this cult that lives in the caves and they secretly steal people from the mansion, which is also a hotel. And I added all these backstories and into it, of course. And but it's their claim to fame, and they both Brandy. Is more of the real true writer of the two of them. Cassandra is more of the she likes to dictate how the story should be done, and it's like, here's my storyline, I'll go write it, and Brandy's more of the person who really she's going to try to get the book two out, and so we'll see where that goes. And I tell them I'll help them as much as I can, and I'm showing them the tools and things that they should be trying to do to get the story, and I crafted an outline for book two even before book one was published. But yeah, their intention is to continue down that path, and at least Brandy, and try to get follow up stories. And Brandy said she had some ideas for some other stories she wants to go with. And when she was a teenager, she was heavy into Dungeons and Dragons, so she's got that wild imagination there to go that route.
Is their book available for purchase?
Yeah, it's on my website. Yeah, it's called the Ghosts of Hollow Ridge. Think it
All
shows a
right.
lady holding a book and a coffee cup or something as the icon. When I redid my website and moved it from GoDaddy over to MailChimp, it made it much simpler and I just dropped in hot links to Amazon. But I'm on other platforms. I have books, same books are in Barnes& and Noble and Drafted Digital. I'm in global bookstores for the electronic books in France, Germany, England, other countries. I'm not even sure some of the writing on the screen. Of course, my books are only in English, but they are available quite a bit of places across the globe.
Are you looking to do any translations?
That's consideration, and I really want to get back into audiobooks. The whole Truth Dreamers thing was just such a devastating event. I spent close to 3,000 with that first company, and then I went and did an audiobook, and I dropped close to another 1,000. And so I spent a lot of money on it, but I had a full-time job, so it didn't seem to be a problem because everybody told me audiobooks will sell well, and it had very minimal movement. It's funny, I'm one of the people that sell more paperback books than I do ebooks or audiobooks, and that's rare, but I think because it's an older crowd that seems to read my books,
Yeah.
not the younger people. And so plus I think I've told my wife when they see my mugshot, I'm an older gray-haired man and they go, "Oh, I don't want to read his book, If I have my 8-year-old son that looks like a supermodel as the author's picture, that'd probably sell a million books, but that's it's just kind of how the market goes.
But when you think of all the really well-loved sci-fi authors, they're not young, hot
That
guys
that's
who are
that's true.
models.
Well, that's structure. Well, yeah, look at me. Not just kidding. There's a no. It's yeah. No, you're absolutely right, and I think that's why I've just enjoyed it so much because I can do like you're stating. I can take and just in the Dark World series, there's such a mixture. There's a mixture of so a little bit of political stuff, nothing heavy, uh, religion references. Then you bring in the Anunnaki and the Sumerians, and then you
Mhm.
bring in the reptilian aliens. You bring in government cover up and New World Order. It's all in that bucket. But I do it seamlessly, like it's all real, and. That's probably one of the only complaints I've had from a few people that they say they read it as if it is reality in this dimension of this world that we're in, and they'll start telling me, "Well, you're a little heavy-handed on, talking about religion is really to control the masses," and they feel like I'm slamming religious people, and I said, "I'm not. It's a story," and I said, and it's part of the storyline. And there's a lot of other filters in there and all this that explain what's going on. So, but that's probably the only criticism I've had from people that I either know personally or they have read it and came back and felt I was being a little heavy-handed.
Well, depending on your perception, your book can have a million different reads to a million
Yeah,
different people.
it really could. It honestly could. I wrote the first book and somebody read it and said, "You got all that in one book?" And I said, "Yeah." And of course, they're like, "I can't think that way." I said, "But my mind works that way. My mind works where something simple. I'll say this: the whole book on Leandros Chronicles.
Mhm.
My wife painted on her iPad a mermaid photo of a girl sitting on the water. She says, "What do you think of that?" And my mind just suddenly went crazy. I
Uh-huh.
start thinking a mermaid. Okay, this guy's on a ship. It crashes, and a mermaid lands in a spaceship next to him, which turns out to be a shuttle and all this. But that was the detail behind it. And suddenly I'm writing this story, and then okay, they get picked up by a ship, and then they get rescued and taken to Atlantis, and then the Atlanteans are fighting this war with these people in Central America who happen to be reptilian, but they're there. But I used to timeline at 500 BC, so I went back to see who's there. And at the time, the Olmecs were fading out, and the Mayans were starting to rise. This is 1,000 years before the Aztecs and the Incas and everybody. And so then I did a timeline search of what was going on in Greece at that time. Well, that was the beginning of the classical period. And actually, in the very back of the book, in the appendix, I did a snippet, like a Google search snippet of here's what was going on at 500 BC in these places that are in my story. And it kind of explains a little microcosm of their politics, what they were doing globally, and it's all in the very back as reference, which is real material to encompass a fictional story, or is it, right? If you
Mhm.
see some of the statues in the Mayans and all of the Olmec, they have actually some reptilian-looking people, and some of their just like the Sumerians did, and some of the other people. So I think there's one theme somebody told me across all my books. Dark World reptilians are one of the bad guys in the book, about Atlantis. They're beneath the pillars. The reptilians are the bad guys. In the Future Conquest space book, the reptilians are the bad guys. They're always there, always lurking, always disguising as humans, and always causing trouble. So
Makes me
yeah.
think of V.
Well, it's so funny you say that because I had seen that when it came out, and I totally had completely not thought about any of that until I was already in maybe second book. Yeah, later after I started looking at it, yeah, there's some V in there, but it wasn't intentional. It just worked out that way because if you really dig into a lot of ancient writings, there is reference to reptilian people,
Mhm.
and so and there's one town they dug up in Iraq that all the things they recovered were little dolls, carvings of little reptilian wearing clothes and stuff and all this. And they're like, of course, people have reasons they explain that was really the gods. And, then you get into, okay, was the Anunnaki a humanoid or was the Anunnaki a reptilian? Because if you Google it, there's people on this planet right now in reality that believe a lot of that. And that's the one thing about the Dark World series. There are true people who've read it and told me, what you're writing is not fiction. This is true. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Well, like I said, perception.
Yes.
So now this seems like a good time to do our 5 quick question segment that we're actually going to change up a little bit for you.
Okay.
We're going to try something a little different. Have you ever heard of the game Kiss, Marry, Kill?
I don't think I have.
Okay, it's a very simple game. I will give you 3 things. Normally, I would give you the names of 3 people like Sandra Bullock, Betty White, and Mayim Bialik. And you would have to
Okay.
decide who you would want to kiss, who you would want to marry, and who you would want to kill. We're going
Okay.
to change it up for you. What we're going to be doing is something that you must have in your life, something that you're okay with having in your life, and something that you're ready to give up today for the rest of your life.
Okay.
So, any questions?
No, I think you explained it well.
Okay, so your first group of three, since you are a sci-fi fan, Star Wars, Star Trek, and Lord of the Rings.
Okay. And so of those three, Lord of the Rings would be the one I'd want to keep.
Hmm.
Wow, the other two are such a coin toss for me personally, but Star Trek would be my second, whatever,
So
not kill.
you're okay with
Yeah,
having it in your life.
yes, yes, and then you would kill Star Wars. Sorry, there's.
That would be hard.
Well, I like them all three, and that Future Conquest has a lot of similarities to both Star Trek and Star Wars.
Mhm.
There's things in the storyline.
Your second set, dogs, cats, and birds.
Okay, dogs keep, birds put up with, and cats can go somewhere else, go live in Egypt.
Your third set, ice cream, cake, and pie.
Pie number one, cake number two, and ice cream I can live without.
Okay, what kind of pie are you so fond of?
Well, normally apple actually, but it can be seasonal. It's apple most of the time, and then it gets towards the holidays, it can become pumpkin. And then, then after that, it's just kind of a toss up. I do a lemon pie, peach pie. I'm a pie guy. So,
Good choices on all of those too.
all right.
So your fourth set, coffee, beer, and soda.
Soda, coffee, and no beer. I don't drink alcohol, so no beer.
You must have soda in your life?
For many years, I drank only tea
Hmm.
and coffee if I had to. And then I got to the point where I started drinking sodas again a few years ago. I went 13 years without soda, and then I started drinking sodas again. And so now I drink soda before I drink water, and then I drink tea usually instead of coffee, and I just don't drink alcohol.
So your last set, this one's going to be a tough one.
Okay.
Writing, reading, or publishing.
Okay, writing, publishing, and then reading, to be honest.
So you're willing to give up reading to keep publishing and writing?
Yes, I would be.
Honestly, that's what I figured you would choose.
Right.
Because I know neither one of us could ever stop writing.
No,
That has
no.
to be in there somewhere.
Always, always. I have to remind my wife of that because she's like, "Okay, when you finish this series, you're taking a break for a year or two, right?" I just smile.
Yeah. That's like my husband's always asking me to, okay, you promise me you're not going to start any more projects anytime soon because you've got enough on your plate that you're doing, right? And it's like,
Right.
uh-huh. Yeah,
Yeah.
sweetie.
Well,
Yes.
that whole Leandros book was written while she's in Austin, so she gave me the accidental concept, and she'll come back this weekend, and so while she was gone, I took it, wrote it, did everything, got it ready, and just launched a few days ago. So,
So now what are you going to be working on next?
well, book four of the Dark World is 90% done. I'm kind of going through an editing of it right now, and before I turn it over and get it finished. So that book's my goal to have it done before the end of the year, maybe as soon as possible. And then I'm allegedly going to take a short break, whatever's the remainder of this year, and then I'm supposed to start up in the first of the year with the new series, and it's basically the series is titled Mystic, and there's three books already outlined with covers and drafts of all three. And it's the one where you've got an ex-CIA operative who used to work in South America, and that he's retired and started a PI, and his name's William Travelin, but his friends call him Will Travel. And so there's a little pun
Nice.
there from the Paladin days of Have Gun Will Travel, right?
Hmm.
And he's got a couple of assistants that work with him, and one girl is a Haitian who's a voodoo queen, and another one was into the heavy occult things of South America, Central America, and Mexico. And these two working with him, they're hired by people for the most rare and hardest to solve cases, and they're always involved in occult and so forth. So the first one's in Galveston, which is near here, and that's the next series, and it involves a little more of my cop background, but that's where I'm headed. In that book one of the Dark World, that's now called Messenger of Dreams, the whole initial part where you're introduced to this character Dylan, who is the ex-military, ex-cop. There's like four police cases in there that are like whodunits that he's using these new abilities he has to solve the crimes. So that's actually in that book. But this next series will take you into more of a, think of like a James Bond type thing where you've got this guy who's a sleuth traveling around the world fighting high stakes enemies.
That sounds so amazing. I'm waiting for that.
All right.
So now remind everybody who you are and where they can find your work.
Sure. My name is Del McCool, and I publish under the name of Del McCool or DG McCool Jr. Right now, you can find all the books on Amazon, ebook, paperback, and some of them are also in the hardcover. Also on Barnes and Noble, and ebooks are scattered across everything. If you go out and look, put in my name and or put into book names. If you go to my website, which is at Sandel, it's SANDEL -writers.com. That will show all the books that are published right now with hot links. It'll take you to Amazon.
And do you have any book signings or meet and greets coming up?
I've been invited to a couple of them between now and the end of the year, but at this moment, I haven't committed. I've been asked by Mike Briggs' group on Briggs on Books out of California to do another interview sometime in the next couple months, and I haven't committed to a date yet.
Very nice. Will you have all of that listed on your website when it's secured?
Yes, it's all there. And the one page, if you click on interviews, it shows all the previous interviews I've done.
This has been so much fun. I'm so glad we were able to work this all out and get you on the show. Your books are going to be perfect for our Halloween issues. It's going to be so much fun seeing what you bring up next.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and be on your show.
So there you have it, folks, my interview with the incredible author D.G. McCool Jr. Be sure to go onto Amazon or onto his own website, sandelwriters.com, and check out all of his work. Don't forget, you can find links to all of his work and to all of our connections in the description of today's podcast. And be sure to check out burkhartbooks.com for more information about everything that has to do with Book Banter Productions. Now, some of the things that I promised to tell you about. First of all, we do have print versions of Book Banter magazine getting produced right now. The first one that has the first 2 digital issues of Book Banter magazine from last year, October and November of 2023. They are available right now in one print volume on Amazon. You can just search for either Book Banter Magazine or Diane Burkhart, and you will be able to find the first version of our print magazines that we're going to be bringing to you. Most of these print versions are going to have 2 of the digital magazines in one issue, because some of them are small enough that we have to combine them to be able to put them in print version at a reasonable price for you. We're going to try and do our best to make them as affordable as possible, because our point is we want to reach as many people as we possibly can, and this is just another venue for us to do that. Now, you can also currently win a 1-year subscription of the PDF format of Book Banter magazine. You will get every issue that we will produce in 2025. All you have to do is go to burkhartbooks.com and join our mailing list. That's it. Now, if you would like to have a few extra entries, all you have to do is find any post that we have done on our social media, like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. All you have to do is find a post that we have made about Book Banter magazine or Book Banter with Diane Burkhart, the Book Talk podcast, and share it on your social media. Just be sure to either tag at Burkhart Books or do hashtag Book Banter magazine so that we can find these and make sure that you get 1 extra entry for each unique post that you make. We're going to have the contest open until October 25th of 2024. And then we're going to announce the winner on Halloween as our treat to 1 lucky listener. I am also working diligently on my next book, Free Bad Haircut with Each Craniotomy, celebrating 20 years of survival. It is coming along very well, and I hope to have it finished, at least the first draft of it, by the end of this month. I had all of the surgeries from April until October of 2004, and yeah, it's been a real experience revisiting all of these memories and my journals and talking to people about what they remember about me and how they were involved going through this with me at that time. And it's really interesting that things that I had forgotten, that it really shocked me, the things that have come up. And it's been a very fascinating journey, and I cannot wait to share this all with you in the upcoming book. Keep watching our social media for more information as this title becomes available. And last thing today, I am furiously getting ready for the Frankfurt Book Mesa. I'm looking forward to this so much. Anybody who is anybody in the publishing industry, whether you're editors, agents, publicists, publishing houses, authors, everybody is going to be at this event, and it's just absolutely amazing. My husband and I are going to be doing a lot of interviews on scene live at the event, and we're going to be bringing these back to you in Book Banter Magazine in our December and holiday year-end shopper guide that's coming out at the end of November for Black Friday shopping. And also during our season hiatus this year, instead of doing my usual best of episodes, I'm also going to be having some of these live interviews interspersed in between a few of the best of shows that I choose. So be sure to check out all of our episodes, even during our season break at the middle of December to the 1st of February. We're going to be bringing you new content that we have never done before. So we've got all kinds of great things coming up here, and more things are coming. So keep watching us, join our mailing list, follow us on social media, because if you love books like we do, you do not want to miss anything that Book Banter Productions is doing. So now you know what time it is, folks. It's time for you all to go forth and be really happy that we're working so hard for you.